So let's try it. We want to use the actual GitHub API, which is pretty simple. api.github.com. That gives us all kinds of craps. And there's a bunch of other endpoints we can hit. api.github.com/various things. There's documentation for all this. If we say api.github.com/users/some username, like old dpalaz here, then we get some JSON that just describes that one user, complete with the URL to her GitHub repo, actually to the API for her GitHub repo. Actually, it's this URL right here, right? There's the HTML URL, which actually takes us to her repo. Says whether she's hireable. She says she's hireable.
Hey, I changed that.
You're looking for new jobs already. I'm just kidding.
I pointed that out. I don't know why it still says that.
I don't know. Because it knows it'll be funny. Oh, there's the avatar URL. You can get the avatar that way. Pretty sweet. So we can get some good stuff this way, just by going to api.github.com/users/the username. Now, you don't want to hit this API too many times, or it will start blocking you. So make sure you don't fetch this in an infinite loop. Someone usually does, and then they can't make the homework work because they get blacklisted for an hour. All right. So let's try not to do that. So we want something to happen when we submit. So when we submit, oh yeah, we just browse to /GitHub/this username, right? And that takes us to our new component, GitHub user. So in GitHub user, we could fetch some data as soon as this thing comes into existence. So we could do it right in the constructor if we wanted. So how about we make a constructor. And we know we should call super. We can pass the props up to super. We'll initialize state. And we'll put a user object in there that'll start off as an empty object. And then we will change that state once we hear back from the GitHub API. So we'll make a function that does that. I'll call it fetch user data. And we'll call that from the constructor. So we'll call this dot fetch user data, open close parens. So the constructor will actually call that. And what's it going to do? We want it to fetch this URL, except not dpalaz every time. So we'll call fetch. We'll pass in a string like this, except instead of dpalaz, what do we want? Look on the screen here and see if you can find the answer somewhere. What do we want in there? Yes. This.props.match.params.username. And then the result will save in this.state. So yeah, it is this.props.match.params.username, which if you do think that's just too darn long, you could always rip params out of there and just say params.username. And then it'll fetch the thing in the background, but it won't do anything with it. So we'll call .then. On the result, it'll send us back some sort of HTTP response. And a lot of times with URLs, with APIs, it'll give you back some JSON, in which case we can call response.json. Let's see what that. There was some documentation there. Okay. And then the result of that will be passed to the next callback. So we are hoping that this is, it looks like this is a user object. So let's just check it out. It's just console.log user. And that should happen as soon as that component loads. Props is not defined. Where did I write that? Well, GitHub user line 5. Oops, yeah. Props need to go into the constructor.
Davey, quick question. What's the difference between passing super props and not?
I think it depends. I don't know, is the honest answer. React, pass, props to super. There's only one reason when one needs to pass props to super, when you want to access this.props in the constructor, which we're not doing, so we don't need to do it. I wondered about that. Yeah. Don't need to do it. Cannot read property match of undefined. Oh, yes, I do need to do it because I knew it was there for a reason. Because we call fetch user data. So before the constructor's ever finished, before the constructor's ever finished, we actually use the props. That is why we have to do it. What's my warning here? Yeah, there's the 404 for GitHub user pancake breakfast. Was a nice try, though. How about old dpalaz? Okay, it changed to dpalaz here, and here we go. What? Not found. What? Oh, well, we're just doing it, yeah. Wait, no, what's going on? So my, we do it when the constructor first loads, but not if its props change. Right, so we need to do it on did update too. So when I first load the page, if there's a valued user there, we find it. Right? But if we change it, it doesn't actually unload the component. It just changes its props. So the constructor doesn't rerun. So we need to do component did update as well. Remember that? Component did update, which receives the new props, the old props, right? Did update receives the previous props. So we can check if previous props dot match dot params dot username not equal to this dot props dot match dot params dot username. In which case we want to call this dot fetch props again, right? Or this dot fetch user data. Right? Does that make sense why we're doing this? So if I type in a new name after the component's already loaded, all that happens inside this component is the props change. And we know that'll trigger component did update, and we'll get whatever the previous props were there. So it could be some other prop that changed. We haven't necessarily actually changed users. So we'll compare the old props to the new. And if they're different, then we'll call fetch user data again. Let's try it out. All right. Right now we've got dpalaz. I do dstruce. There we go. It changed, and I got the new results from fetch. Totally works. Cool. So we could do something with that.
Example said it got an error, cannot read property username of undefined.
Yes. Something's wrong. We'll check it in a second. Let's make this actually do something, though. So we've got fetch user data. All it does is console log it now, right? What we actually wanted to do is this dot set state user, right? Take that user, set it to this dot state dot user. Let's check that out in my React Dev Tools. This is the GitHub user component, and now state has that user. Change it to a different user, and it changed, and now it's me. Cool. So what can I do with that? I could show some of that stuff down here. Instead of just saying the username in huge letters, how about we show the avatar? We saw that in the results. Avatar URL's right there. How about it? Say image source equals this dot state dot user dot avatar URL. Now we're going to be pulling a bunch of stuff out of here, so I think I do want to. I'm not going to pull params out of props inside render. We're not using it anymore, but I could do const user equals this dot state. So I have a variable, local variable called user. So I can just say user.avatar URL. Always include the alt attribute, even if it's not going to be anything. And then underneath, I'll put an h2 that just prints user.login. There we go. Want to put some other stuff? Now, what else we got? All kinds of good stuff in here. Number of followers, location. How about we put user.name login in parentheses. Put an H3 under there with user.location. There we go. And we can make it link to the actual profile, right? We saw that. GitHub user dot, I think it was called HTML URL. There it is. So how about we make the name a link? It doesn't need to be a React Router link. It's just a link to a website. href equals user.html URL. Click on that, and it takes us to the actual GitHub page. So how about I remember what I was trying to do? Oh, yeah. You know about this trick with links in HTML? Target equals underscore blank. That'll open a new tab. That way they can stay on here. Opens it in a new tab. Powerful stuff. Now it's an API party. Yeah. Get user data from GitHub API. Questions about that? Some APIs require you to sign up for an API key, which a lot of times you'll just pass in a query string as part of the URL. You know what a query string is? It's like this thing. Question marks at the beginning of the query string. Then you have a series of keys and values. And they're basically usually the values from a form. But sometimes you have to pass that in with an API key to use some URLs. You have to actually sign up. Can't do it anonymously. GitHub, you can use an API key or you can do it anonymously, but there's some restrictions on anonymous ones. That's fairly typical too. What kind of warning am I getting here? I got a 403 forbidden for some reason. Did I do it too many times? I probably did it too many times within just a second or two. So I am now blocked. So that was fun while it lasted.